Hello, all. I just wanted to hop on here and talk to you guys a little bit about carbs since they are a little bit more complicated and kind of the macro that we're going to need to play around with a little bit more to figure out what's appropriate for each of our individual diets. Um, and I will still post this information in the guide for you, but just talking a little bit about carbs. Um, if you see me look away, I have my notes here. So, carbs are our body's preferred energy source. So, what that means is, if we have an excess of those carbs in our body, then it's going to store as fat. But then, if we don't have enough, our body is going to be struggling, especially in those high intensity workouts. So, you want to find that perfect amount of carbs for you and for your workouts to fuel you, but not be stored as fat on your body. And then we will talk kind of later, a few weeks later, or next week about how to do that, or how to calculate that. But for today, I kind of want to talk more about our goals with carbs and which ones are considered good for us, which are bad, and how to avoid the bad ones. So, 1 gram for a carb equals 4 calories. So, it's the same as protein. Protein is also 4 calories, and fat is 9, just as a little refresher there. There are simple carbs and there are complex carbs. So simple carbs are 1 or 2 sugars in that carb molecule, and then complex carbs can be 10 sugars up to thousands in that one carb molecule. So what does this mean? People used to think that, simple carbs were bad for you and they would raise your sugar or your blood sugar levels, and that complex carbs were better for you. But it's a little bit easier actually to get into kind of looking at that GI scale. So the glycemic index scale, if you've heard of that, is a scale, and carbs are ranked on it. The lower carbs on the scale are supposed to be better for you, and it kind of sustains your blood sugar levels a little bit better. And then the ones that are higher up on the scale are not considered as healthy for you, and your body will burn through them a little bit faster. So you can pretty much Google any food and see where it ranks on that glycemic index. So the goal with that, and why I wanted to talk about that a little bit, not to get too complicated, was about kind of maintaining blood sugar levels. And that glycogen that gets stored in our livers and our muscles is used for excuse me, I lost my train of thought, is used for fueling our muscles for workouts. And then when that dips down too low, we need to replenish those stores. So when it comes to maintaining our blood sugar levels on that GI scale, it's best to pick foods that are lower on the scale. And then even so, you want to pair those foods with a fat and a protein, and then your body is going to maintain that blood sugar level even better throughout the day. And it is also important because it helps us kind of just stay fuller longer too. So when you're pairing your carbs with a protein and a fat, you're going to stay full longer, and it's going to keep you satisfied, which is very important, right? Okay, so that's the glycemic index. If you're interested, like I said, you can just Google any food and see where it ranks on that glycemic index. And I would challenge you guys to try and pick foods that are a little bit lower on that glycemic index and kind of stick with those. Not to say that, not to get too complicated, but some foods that are high on the glycemic index, it doesn't mean they're necessarily bad for you. You would have to eat a large amount of those foods to actually have a negative effect on you. So for example, watermelon. So watermelon isn't bad for you. You can have watermelon. It's just higher on the glycemic index, but it doesn't take into account the fact that you would have to eat a ton of watermelon for that to have like a really bad effect on your blood sugar levels. So Don't worry if you're just having a little bit of something that's higher on the glycemic index. Kind of think about it and think about how much of it you're going to be eating, right? So that's important. To make things simple, our goal ultimately is to get all of our carbs from healthy sources and minimize refined sugars and minimize those processed carbs. So if you're getting all of your carbs from vegetables and fruits and potatoes, rice, whole grains, oats, then you're looking pretty good. And that's really the ultimate goal here. So not to overcomplicate things this week, especially with the plates method, you just want to think about getting in vegetables with every meal. A little bit of fruit is fine. And then getting your carbs from those whole grain sources. So whole grain breads, oatmeal, like I mentioned, or potatoes or a whole grain rice is totally fine. Now, fiber kind of falls under that carb category, and fiber keeps us fuller and satisfied longer. There are two different types of fiber. There's soluble and insoluble fiber. One mixes with water and one does not. So soluble fiber combines with water, and it kind of creates this gel-like sticky substance in your body, and it helps slow down digestion. So therefore, it has a slow response on your blood sugar levels. And some of these sources of soluble fiber are oats, barley, beans, nuts, apples, and blueberries. Okay. And then you have your insoluble fiber, and it does not combine with water, and it helps bulk up your stool and speeds up digestion in your body. Okay. So that would be sources of that would be your wheat bran, whole grain products, and vegetables. Now, it is recommended that we get fiber from both sources, and you need 10 to 15 grams per 1,000 calories. So if you're eating 2,000 calories a day, then the minimum that you want to get of fiber in your day is 20 grams, up to 30, right? The goal, it's really not that hard to hit those if you're eating vegetables. So if you are someone that tracks on MyFitnessPal, you'll see fiber is a little option on there. You can make it a goal to hit a certain number of grams of fiber for yourself. But like I said, if you're adding a little bit of vegetables to each meal, then you should be doing just fine. Fiber usually isn't a huge problem for people. Okay. So just to kind of reiterate what I just babbled about for 8 minutes, the goal here with our carbs is to eat less refined carbs and a little bit of healthier carbs like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, potatoes, and that's what I want to see you guys trying to get into your diets this week. And I wouldn't worry too much about the volume, except for kind of looking at your whole plate and seeing how much of it is considered your healthy vegetables. You know, you want half of that plate to be greens or good vegetables like that, and then a smaller amount of starches. And then if you're training more, increase that amount a little bit more, and you should be doing pretty good for yourself. If you guys have any questions, like I said, I will post the notes in the guide, but that just gives you a nice little overview in case you're sick of reading.